beginners and intermediate students especially. Welcome to Keyboard Chords Exploration Part 2. Um, this time we're going to tackle the concept of intervals, because without intervals there would not be any type of chords. So uh, in the intervals are the basis of chord construction. So if you're going to build chord on the keyboard, if you want to understand how to build chord on the keyboard, you need to know something about intervals, because that's what it takes to build chord and to play them. Because when you're playing chords, you're actually playing uh, several types of intervals on top of each other. Even when you're playing melodies, you're playing intervals, but horizontally. So it is very important that you know something about intervals. Um, the on your keyboard you have scales. You can play scales. You can play major scales. You can play minor scales, and so on. But to understand the concept of intervals, we're going to use the C chromatic scale to to build the intervals, so you can see how so you can have a better understanding of the structures of their structures on the keyboard. Uh, we're going to use the C chromatic scale in the when speaking of C chromatic scale. I'm talking about playing a scale with only half steps from the root to the octave. Only half steps, like a C major scale. You're gonna play C middle C to C octave, but chromatically. So it's gonna be that C chromatic scale. And when you play one note and you play another note, up or down, you actually playing an interval, the distance from C to the distance from middle C to C octave. That's an interval. Okay, that's a distance between the two notes. But intervals within a scale, whether it is the major scale or the chromatic scale, each interval has a name attached to it, and an interval can be either major, minor, augmented, diminished, followed by some number. That's why as students of the keyboard of the piano, you need to know the numbers attached to every single note on in the scale. Okay, especially in the major scale. Then if you have like in the major scale, C major scale, you start with 1, which is C, D, that's note number 2, E, note number 3, F, note number 4, 5, note number 5, and so on and so on. Then when you raise a note half step or lower it a half step, so you can still use numbers. You can still use the numbers, but it's going to be flat whatever number or sharp whatever number. Okay, like C, C sharp, sharp 1, D, D sharp, sharp 2, okay, or flat 3, stuff like that. So instead of using letter names for the notes, we're going to use numbers. So that's why for the interval, you're going to hear a major second, minor second, major 7, minor 7, things like that, depending on the number of half steps between the intervals. That is very important for you to know. You need to know the number of half steps, okay, that are in an interval between any given two notes. How many half steps in a specific interval contains, and that's how you're going to know. That's how you're going to know the name of the interval. If you don't know how many half steps a specific interval has, you will not be able to name that interval. The names of the intervals depend on the number of half steps in those intervals. Okay, so we can now we can define in intervals. We can define an interval as the distance between two notes or two tones. The words tones and notes are interchangeable. You can use either or. So an interval, one definition is the distance between two notes or two tones. Okay, so if I play C and then I play C octave, that's a distance. Okay, that there's the distance between C root and C octave. That's a distance which is an interval between C and C. Okay, so we can also define an interval as the difference in pitch between two tones or two notes. You can have a low pitch note and a high pitch note. Okay, so the difference in pitch between those two notes is also an interval. For example, if I play middle C, then that you hear the pitch. that's a kind of low pitch, okay? And if I play the octave, C octave, that's a higher pitch. So that's a difference. And the reason why they have different pitches is 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 the difference in the interval. Okay? So you know a pitch is a sound. Okay? And then it is a sound wave, okay, that contains frequencies. Okay, the middle C has lower frequencies than the C octave. Okay, all right. So now you it is absolutely necessary that you know. I don't know how you want to do it. I don't know if you just want to memorize the number of half steps in different types of intervals. I don't know if you want to memorize those things, or I don't know if you want to just come to your keyboard, you know, from time to time, and then try to figure out where those intervals are. But it is absolutely necessary that you know the number of steps, of half steps. It is absolutely necessary that you know the number of half steps in an interval between any given two notes, because when you invert those intervals, the they're going the structures are going to change. For example, I may have an interval of major second, okay, from C, let's say from C to C sharp. Now if I invert that order, if I play C sharp to C, you see the structure of that interval changes. So now how do you know how many half steps you have in the new inverted interval? No. How do you know the name? How do you know the name of the new inverted interval that you just played? Well, it's by counting how many half steps there are in that new inverted intervals, and then if you know how the name of the intervals according to the number of half steps they have, then you can determine the name of the new inverted interval. Okay? So now we're going to start building intervals on the keyboard, starting with the smallest interval that you can play. And we're going to use a C chromatic scale, okay, to do it. So we're going to start with, remember, we're talking about number half steps in the intervals. How many half steps in the intervals? And then if we know, then we will know the names of those intervals. Okay. Now we're going to start with the smallest interval that we can play. We start with C. On your keyboard, you find middle C. And then for middle C, you play half step up. You raise middle C up one half step. Okay? And you know on your keyboard, as students of the keyboard, you know how to get your steps, whole step, half steps on the keyboard. Now, to get a half step on the keyboard, you got to play the note closest to the note you're playing, up or down, to get half step. So the note closest to the C note, to the middle C, is C sharp. So when I play C sharp, I just play only one half step. And you know, because that interval C to C sharp or D flat has only one half step, its name is minor second. Okay. Minor second, one half step. All right. So I'm playing those intervals based on the root, which is C. But I want you to know that you can start an interval on any key within the scale. It does not have to be from the root. You can start an interval on any key, any note within the scale. Okay? But for the purpose of making it more simple for you to understand the concept, we're building all the intervals on one note, which is the root. So all the intervals, all the names of all the intervals we are building from the root C, the names are going to include the names are going to be some C types, some C type names. That's what I'm trying to say. So whatever intervals we're going to end up with is going to be some C type interval. Okay. So example, we just play C to C sharp. So you can call this C minor second. Okay? So remember that. Now we're gonna play, we just played the smallest interval, okay? In the C chromatic scale. Okay, now let's play from C to D. Okay, from C to D, okay, we have two half steps. Okay, two half steps. So any interval that contains two half steps is called major second. Okay. Now, let's play C to, we're going to play C to D sharp or E flat. C to D sharp, which is also E flat. Okay, C to D, C to D sharp or E flat, that interval contains three half steps. Three half steps from C to D sharp or E flat. Three half steps. Any interval that has three half steps in it, such as C to E flat or D sharp, is called minor third. Okay, let's move on. Now, let's play from C to E. Okay, from C to E, the interval from C to E, the distance from C to E has four half steps in it. Any interval that has four half steps is called a major third. Okay, let's move on. Now let's play from C to F. Okay, C to F. F is the fourth note. Is the fourth note in the key of C major. Okay. Okay. Now the distance or the interval between C and F, which is the fourth note in the key of C major, that interval, that distance has five half steps. And for that reason only, it is called a perfect fourth. Okay? C to F, that interval is a perfect fourth. So anytime you see an interval that has four half steps, sorry, I'm talking about five half steps. If I said four half steps for C to F, that was a mistake. So I'm saying C to F, okay, that interval has five half steps, which makes it a perfect fourth. Any interval that you come across, any interval that you play on the keyboard that has five half steps is a perfect fourth. Perfect fourth. Okay? And you might be asking yourself why that interval is called a perfect fourth. Well, one of the reasons why it is called a perfect fourth, because a perfect fourth is neither major nor perfect nor minor. A perfect fourth interval is neither major or minor. And this is one of the reasons why it is called a perfect interval. Okay? And maybe that's one of the reasons why the subdominant in a major scale, the subdominant chord is built on that perfect, on the root of that perfect interval. Maybe that's part of the reason why it is called perfect. All right, now let's move on. All right, now we're gonna play from C to F sharp. C to F sharp. Okay, C to F sharp. That means we raise the fourth. We raised the fourth half step, which makes it an augmented fourth. I don't really like to call intervals augmented unless it is augmented fifth. But in this case, I'm gonna do it. I call that interval from C to F sharp an augmented fourth. You can also call it since the fifth of the scale is half step above the augmented fourth, which is G. So we can say the augmented fourth is also diminished fifth. Okay? So, and that interval has 6 half steps in it. So every time you see an interval that has 6 half steps, it is an augmented fourth or a diminished fifth. Okay? So here it is. Okay. So at this point, we know that the chromatic scale has 12 half steps in it, from C all the way to C octave. When you play the chromatic scale from C to C octave, when you do that, you played 12 half steps. But now we're playing from C to F sharp, which is also augmented fourth and diminished fifth, and we counted 6 half steps, which is exactly half of 12. So when you reach diminished, when you play augmented fourth or diminished fifth interval, you are halfway of completing the entire scale, the entire chromatic scale, because the chromatic scale has 12 half steps, and now you're playing you're playing an interval of diminished fifth, which has 6 half steps. So right there, you are in the middle of the C chromatic scale. You are halfway. you only have to play one more half. You won't have to play the other half to finish playing the entire C chromatic scale. All right, now let's move on. Let's play from C to G. Okay, the distance from C to G, that interval has 7 half steps. And then because of those half steps, that interval is called a perfect fifth. Okay? Perfect fifth. 7 half steps. Okay, that's a perfect fifth. And just like perfect fourth, it is called a perfect fifth because it is neither major nor minor. And as you know, it is the dominant chord in a major scale is built on the root of this perfect fifth. That's one of the reasons why, just like the perfect fourth, it is called a perfect fifth. Okay? 7 half steps. So when you see an interval that has 7 half steps, it is a perfect fifth. All right. Okay, now we're going to play from C to G sharp. Now what we did, we just raised the fifth a half steps. For that reason, that interval is called augmented fifth. And this is the only interval that I don't have any problem calling augmented. Okay? Augmented fifth. Okay? And then that same interval can also be called minor 6, because right after sharp 5 we get a 6. Okay, then that's flat 6 right there, so that's a minor. We can call that interval an augmented fifth or minor 6. Okay, so why? Because it has 8 half steps in it. 8 half steps. Okay, an interval that has 8 half steps is an augmented fifth interval or a minor 6 interval. Okay, let's keep on going now. All right, let's play now. Let's play C to A. Okay, C to A. A is the number 6 note in the key of C major. C to C, when you play C to the 6, C to 6 to A, which is the 6th note, that interval, that distance between those two notes is called major 6, and it has 9 half steps. So when you play an interval that has 9 half steps, it is it is major. It is called major 6 interval. Now, if you invert it, that will change. But now it's on you to go and count how many intervals that you have in the new inverted interval, so you can name it. Okay. All right. So now from C, did I show you? Let me show you. I don't know. I don't remember. That's a major 6. C to A. Okay. Now let's move up. Let's play C to sharp, C to A sharp, C to A sharp, which is also B flat. Okay, that is a very important interval for you, for us to know, because when you play from the root to flat, from the root, when you play from the interval from the root to the flat 7 of the scale, you're playing dominant 7th. That's a dominant 7th interval now. I mean, if you're playing the chord, okay, that will give you C dominant 7, right? Okay, so that's a very important interval to know. So from C to A sharp, okay, in that interval there are 10 half steps, and for that reason, because it has 10 half steps in it, it is called minor 7th interval. Minor 7th interval. Okay, from C to the flat 7, or I don't want to really call it a sharp 6, but if you want to call it a sharp 6, it's up to you. Okay, so but remember that interval, minor 7th interval, from C to E, from C to B flat, A sharp or B flat, 10 half steps, minor 7th interval. Now we move from, let's play from, okay, let me make sure I show you the minor. Okay, this is from C to B to A sharp or B flat, which is minor 7th interval. Now let's play from C to B. C to B. Okay, that interval has 11 half steps. Anytime you see an interval that has 11 half steps in it, it is called major 7th interval, such as from C to B. Yeah, then you can play C major 7th chord right here. You can play C major 7th chord right here. Okay, so that interval has 11 half steps. C to B, major 7th interval. And last, well, not last, there's more, there will be more. And now from we're going to complete the chromatic scale. we're going to complete the chromatic scale from middle C to C octave. Okay, so now we're going to play from C, the middle C to C octave. And how many half steps from C to C octave? 12 half steps. Every time you play from the root to the octave, you played 12 half steps. There you go.